Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Lacrosse University podcast. Hopefully, your premier spot for all things college lax. We're talking week to week Tewaaraton watch list, teams who can make a push for the Natty, and just kind of everything from, Tillman complaining about guys wearing different colored gloves to, Lars Tiffany turning in another long pole into Larkin Kemp. Anyways, I didn't really know when I wanted to do this first episode. As any college lacrosse fan knows, the start date for most of these teams is not the same. Got teams like Hopkins and Syracuse have already played 4 games apiece, contrasting with the Ivies who just had their first games this weekend. Shout out to Cornell and Harvard. They both took the wins. So, like I said, the start date for all these teams kind of fluctuates. I figured once everyone got at least one game under their belt, that would be a pretty good time to start. And, let's get into it. So I guess a little bit about me. First off, name is Max, born and raised in Massachusetts. Played lacrosse from, 8 years old up through high school, and then I played a couple years of club lacrosse until COVID came and ruined that, just like it fucking ruined everything. But stuck with following the sport. I did a little bit of writing in college for a startup sports media company. I think most people in the company had never even heard the word lacrosse, so safe to say I was the only one really covering the sport there. And that kind of continued this passion and love for the game, and just kind of want to get on here, throw some takes around, hopefully bring some new viewers to the sport of lacrosse, and if we can get some people to watch some games this spring, then I feel like my job is done. So, as for the podcast, I don't have any sort of schedule or kind of plan laid out. I figured I'd like to go maybe twice a week to start, maybe previewing the games for the weekend, and then coming back on a Monday or Tuesday and kind of recapping all the weekend's action. So we'll go from there. Like I said, I didn't really know when I wanted to do this first episode, but figured once every team has played one game, no better time to do that. Just sitting here on a Tuesday watching Colgate Harvard have an absolute barn burner. Got 16-13 Colgate, about 8 minutes to go. But like I said, figured everyone got a game under their belt. Let's go through the resumes of the top 15, kind of check in on who's leading goals, points, assists, everything like that. And then we'll preview a little bit of the weekend games coming up. So, and I'll come up for a clever name, hopefully, after we do a couple of these episodes. Every week, I kind of just want to take a look at the top 15 teams, go through their resumes, kind of see if anyone's a little bit of fool's gold, maybe a little undervalued. The rankings are a little tough right now because, like I said, Cornell, who's at 4, has only played one game. And you got, like, Hopkins right above him, who's already played 4. So take it this week with a grain of salt, but once more games and kind of we get some more information, then this segment should be a lot more entertaining going forward. I think we have to start off, obviously, with Notre Dame, defending champions from last year. They were the preseason number 1 for a reason. They have talent up and down the roster. They're going to have to replace 2 just massive stalwarts in the program. Not only from a production standpoint on the field, but just 2 guys who had that fucking dog in them that you don't just replace these guys overnight. Obviously, that is Pat Cavanaugh and Liam Entenmann. If you know the Cavanaughs, they're just fucking tough motherfuckers. Anytime you can get one of those guys in your team, you'll take it. And Entenmann, if you watched the national championship last game, I thought he was the best player on the field. And is he a top 3 goalie walking on the planet right now? I'd have a hard time arguing 2 other guys. But they depart, and Corrigan's have that next man up mentality. I mean, you still got Chris Kavanaugh there, who's hasn't skipped a beat. He's got 13 points in the 2 games, including 7 assists, which I like to see. I feel like when Pat was there, he was kind of the finisher, the goal scorer. Now he's kind of doing a little more of that quarterbacking, and he's had some success. Jake Taylor, all the fucking guy does is score goals. He's got 10 through 2. I'd love him to finish with like 70 goals and just no assists. I mean, all the guy does is just score. Notre Dame 2-0, wins over Cleveland State and Marquette. Not a ton to say. I mean, they dominated both those games, and I guess we'll just kind of want to wait and see until they play a little bit tougher schedule. But I mean, I got just the ultimate faith in Corrigan, that staff, to get the boys going. Moving on to number 2 is Maryland. Goddamn Maryland. Tillman is the fucking boogeyman. I mean, as long as that guy's breathing and on the sideline for the Terps, they're going to have a good squad. They just talk about culture. I think Corrigan is established as a Notre Dame. Danowski at Duke. On a lesser extent. Tillman's culture at Maryland is one of just the most foolproof. I don't even know how to describe. Just the guy just fucking knows how to win. I mean, I don't love. It's kind of like, I mean, I love this guy growing up in Massachusetts, but if you weren't from Massachusetts growing up watching the Patriots, you hated Bill Belichick. Tillman's got a little bit of that kind of Emperor Palpatine vibes. He just kind of walks around. If you don't play for him, you probably fucking don't like the guy. But I got nothing respect for him and their program. They picked up a huge win against Gary Gate and the Syracuse Orange over the weekend. Want to see a little bit more from Urksa. But, I mean, Eric Spanos, the two top performing point scorers from last year, has played pretty well. He's got 10 points, 6 goals, and 4 apples through 3 games. And like I said, they just picked up a huge win. And they are the only team, if I'm looking at my notes right now, them and Hopkins, the only 2 teams with 2 top 15 wins in the first 4 weeks. So Maryland's chugging along. They'll be all right. I wonder when they play, they just played a Syracuse, so maybe my theory's wrong. When they play a higher scoring team, can they match that points-wise? But, I mean, they just held Spallina and Hiltz, Michael Leo, and all those guys to seven goals. So they might be all right. Number 3, Hopkins. Wins over Loyola, Georgetown, Towson, and Denver. Like Maryland, they got those 2 top 15 wins. Didn't love what I saw from them against Loyola. Loyola had a fourth quarter lead, but Hopkins ended up pulling that one out. Shout out Russell Melendez. Guy just oozes kind of moxie and swag. He's got 9 goals and 6 apples through 4 games. Hunter Chauvet, lefty sniper, and Matt Collison, who just gives me lefty Sergio Perkovic vibes. Maybe not in terms of his dodging ability, but just his time and room shot. I feel like he's going to go through the net every time he shoots. So Hopkins will be all right. They're 4-0. Big game this weekend against UNC. We'll talk about that a little later. Cornell, like I said, kind of tough to judge. They've only played 1 game. I mean, but if you want to be pretty optimistic, 2 best guys, CJ Curse and Michael Long. Long has 7 points in that first game, and Curse had 5 goals. So pretty much all you can ask from your 2 top guys. They took down Lehigh. I think the Tewaaraton is going to come down to CJ Curse and Spallina. Spallina's played 3 more games than Curse, but Curse, I think, is just his potent goal scoring is just too much for the Ivy League. So I imagine him and Spallina will be fighting for that Tewaaraton at the end. Number 5, another Ivy. I'll put him on the watch list as well. I mean, Coulter Mackesy. The guy is just smooth as butter. Can dodge, can shoot. Just kind of do everything you want for an attackman. I mean, he had 5 goals and 1 assist in the win over Penn State for Princeton as they kind of get their season going. So, Mackesy, Kirst, Spallina, probably be the Tewaaraton finalists at the end of the year. Speaking of Spallina, number 6, Cuse. Kind of a weak couple wins, Jacksonville, Vermont, and Towson. And then they lost to Maryland this last weekend. But it's hard not to have faith in the offense. And when I say offense, I mean Joey Spallina. I mean, with Schellenberger gone and gone to the PLL, I think he's like the truest, you call him quarterback in college lacrosse, just a guy who's going to operate from X and just kind of dictate the offense, the tempo, everything they want to do for Cuse runs through Spallina. And it shows through 4 games. I mean, the guy's got 12 goals and 13 assists. Leads the country in points. And, I mean, I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. Michael Leo, also. Just one of my favorite, just spot up, almost like a spot up 3-point shooter from that lefty side. And Owen Hiltz, Canadian Hill Academy. Shout out to him too. So shout out Cuse. Love that Gary Gates, the coach too. I know this is his third year coaching the men's team. Just anytime you can get just an absolute legend. Yeah, I mean, I want to say legend, maybe the GOAT of just lacrosse in general, to coach at his alma mater and then have the team be pretty damn good is pretty cool to see. So I'm rooting for Cuse. I'm not going to lie. Loved Cuse ever since the John Desco days. Kevin Rice, Dylan Donahue, Randy Stotts, little Hakeem Lecky in there too. I'm a Cuse fan at heart. So if those guys can go on a run, even just make a run in the tournament, I think the sport is just better when Cuse is good. Number 7, Duke. The Duke Blue Devils, like Notre Dame, just replacing these guys. I put the big 3, Pat Kavanaugh, Schellenberger for UVA, and Brennan O'Neill for Duke. Just 3 massive losses for 3 of the most premier teams in the sport. Brennan O'Neill, obviously, playing for the Outlaws in the PLL. I expect just a massive season from him. But Duke is going to have to find a way to replace him. Not only his points and production on the field, but just that locker room presence of just knowing this guy's on our team. In any given game we walk onto the field, we have the best player. I'm going to be honest. I've watched 2 Duke games. I watched week 1 against Jacksonville and last week against St. Joe's. I'm going to be honest. I have not been that impressed. Just eye test wise, I know they're 3-0. I know they scored 20 plus goals, I believe, against Jacksonville. St. Joe's, I feel, it was just not afraid of Duke over the weekend. I feel like every time Duke kind of tried to mount some momentum, Joe's would just kind of slow it down, take a deep breath, and just attack. And I mean, not to say that Duke on the ropes, but I didn't feel great about Duke in that second half. And they pull out and they get the win. Eric Molliver's got 15 points through 3 games, so they'll be all right. I want to see once they play some ACC teams and have to face some higher scoring offense. They're going to have to find some points somewhere. Kind of thought McAdory would be maybe not the focal point of the offense, but just stuff runs through him, and it's been all right, but I just kind of expected a bigger jump with O'Neal leaving. Army, number 8, 2-0, wins over UMass and Rutgers. Not a ton to say. They got a big game against Yale, so I guess we'll get to see more this weekend. But watch a little of the Rutgers-Army game. Pretty good defensive battle if you like defense. Rutgers not a bad defensive team. Lacking the offense. Obviously, they don't have Knobloch anymore, but I don't know. I don't have a very definitive take on Army. Just kind of want to see more. UNC, I'm kind of in the same boat. They kind of housed Michigan 2 weeks ago, and then they beat Stony Brook this past week. Again, I'd just like to see more. It's tough with this little sample size to kind of just evaluate these teams, but like what I've seen from UNC, Dom Petramala. So funny hearing the Petramala name for UNC, but he's got 9 goals, 1 assist, averaging 5 points a game. So need a little bit more. Huge game, probably my favorite game coming this weekend. UNC at Hopkins, both undefeated. I mean, both will just be massive wins for either team, so we'll talk about that a little later. Number 10, Penn State. Lost to Princeton, obviously, last weekend, but wins over Colgate and Nova. Nothing crazy to write home about, as Colgate just put the nail in the coffin against Harvard. Good game. Where was I? Penn State. Oh, yeah. I don't know, one positive. Matt Trainor's just scoring goals every game. He's got 14 already, so I guess pretty positive outlook on Penn State. Tough loss to Princeton, but they'll keep it going. Georgetown. I don't know how I feel about Georgetown's offense is a very hard watch right now for me. Obviously some departures to the PLL, but I just feel like they're still trying to search for their guy to run everything through, whether it be Aiden Carroll or Fulton Bayman's got 10 points through 3 games, so maybe it's him. But I think Kevin Warren they gotta nail down that offensive identity before they start playing some of these better teams. And when they played Hopkins, I thought they lacked the firepower to stay with them. So Georgetown, I think, has got some soul searching to do. I think once we get out of the top 10, each of these teams, they got some warts, but it's still early, so who knows. 12, Denver, the 2-1, wins over Utah and Air Force, nothing crazy. They lost to Hopkins. Cody Malowski, 13 points through those 3 games, 7 goals, 6 assists. He's picking up where he left from last season. So I got Denver. I feel like Maryland, they just got, even though Tierney's gone, they got the infrastructure to be successful. They'll never be terrible. Will they ever win another championship? I don't know, but I feel like their floor is pretty good. Richmond. I hinted at Richmond a little in the beginning. I watched Richmond UVA from start to finish. Just because I have questions about UVA, who's replacing Schellenberger and everything, but I do want to start with Richmond. They started that game. I think I read, too, that was the first time Richmond has ever beaten UVA, so shout out the Spiders. I mean, within the first 3 minutes, I think, UVA's down 2-0. Shout out Lucas Littlejohn for Richmond. Scored those 2 quick goals. He's got 7 goals, 3 assists on the season. But they just, I don't know if it was a lack of UVA offense or just Richmond firing on all cylinders that day, but the score reflected it, the play reflected it. I mean, there was no question who the better team was on the field. And honestly, like, I'll get into it with the UVA. Like, the more professional team, honestly, just kind of handled their business. They weren't talking shit. They weren't getting overly aggressive. And just a real good win for Richmond. They did get kind of handled by Maryland. Was that week 1 or week 2? One of the 2 games. But, I mean, you beat UVA. I don't care who's on UVA. That's a pretty damn good win. All right, now on to UVA, which they have been a constant in the college lacrosse tournament, playoff, championship window picture, whatever you want to say, since Tiffany has got there. And I have no doubt that they will turn it around, make a run. They'll definitely be in the playoffs. What their ceiling is, I think, will be the question. My number one concern watching that game, they miss Connor Schellenberger more than I think any team misses any of their guys who moved on to the PLL. Their offense was, like, to be blunt, just disorganized, ugly. Kind of they took whatever the Richmond defense was giving them, whether that be McCabe Millen, who had a couple nice goals, but him and Truett Sunderland seem to be like the 2 go-to guys for UVA right now. My only problem with Millen is obviously has all the talent in the world. Was number 1 recruit 2 years ago. Played on the team last year that was absolutely loaded. He's only a sophomore. And I think Quint and Kark were talking on the broadcast. He scored a goal. They're down 6-2 in the first quarter. In McCabe scores. Instantly gets into it with a Richmond guy and is like in his face talking shit and gets a penalty for it. And he's just a young player. I don't want to talk because the talent is undeniable, but I don't know. He's just got to work out some of the other stuff because I just saw an undisciplined, which is weird for a Lars Tiffany team. They look young, undisciplined, and just kind of all over the place. Again, I just trust their infrastructure. They'll probably figure it out and make the playoff. Like I said, though, their ceiling, who knows? Harvard, rounding out the top 15, 1-0. I guess now 1-1 after they just lost to Colgate. They had a win over Providence over the weekend. Not much to say. It was Sam King had a goal and 6 assists against Providence over the weekend, and I think he just had another 7-point performance today against Harvard. I mean, the kid's just a stud, number 7. Not a ton to say about the Crimson. I'd like to see. I want to see a Harvard Princeton, maybe a Harvard Cornell, just to kind of see how they match up against the 2 big dogs in the Ivy. So we'll go from there. That rounds out the top 15. I thought the best win over the weekend was Maryland taking it to Cuse. Not only they win, but they held Cuse in that high-powered offense to 7 goals. Shout out Tillman and that Maryland squad. Worst loss, nothing to take away against Richmond. But as you heard me say, that's the first time Richmond has ever beaten UVA. And again, I'm not closing the book on UVA. I want to see them against some top-tier ACC talent, but can't be losing to Richmond. Just can't be losing to Richmond. The next thing I would like to do, kind of just want to, like I just did with the top 15, just went through it, gave a little thought on each team. Just kind of want to update the leading goal scorers, assist leader, cause turnovers, just kind of maybe give some spotlight to some other guys who maybe aren't on the premier teams, but have started off the season pretty nice. So like I said, points leaders, Spallina's is having just an absolute tear of a season so far. 25 points, he's got 12 goals, he's got 13 apples. That guy just, when he's behind X, he's just getting whatever he wants. Can put it in either hand, can feed. Having Leo and Hiltz on that left side to finish those assists probably helps. But Spallina, like I said, him, Kirst, and McAtee, I feel like going to be jarring for that Tewaaraton at the end of the season. Shout out to the Bucknell Bison. Watched their game against Michigan over the weekend. Unfortunately, wait, was that against Hobart? Hold on. All right, that was against Hobart. Never mind. But still, shout out Bucknell. Michael Meyer and Connor Davis are 2 and 3 nationally for points, total points so far. Meyer's a little bit more balanced. He's got 11 goals to 9 assists. And Connor Davis, 17 goals for Bucknell. So shout out to those guys. Like I said, Matt Trainer for Penn State, he's got 14 goals and 18 points on the season. And then Ryan Bell for Providence. Love this stat line. He's got 1 goal and 16 assists, which leads the country. All he's doing is just chucking apples all around. So similar to Jake Taylor, who I want to score 80 goals and have 0 assists, I'd love Ryan Bell to finish the season with 1 goal and 65 assists. The goals leader so far, Alex Mariner for Ohio State. He's got 19. I watched Ohio State week 1 against Utah. Not a great showing for the Buckeyes. They've kind of gotten it on track though the last couple of weeks. Want to see get me into the Big Ten play. Let's see Ohio State against Hopkins and Maryland, and we'll go from there. Face-off leader, Carter Krysak. I'm going to be honest, never heard of this guy before this year. Playing for Mercer, winning 80% of his draws. When you get a guy, I will never, ever forget, when you have a Fogo who is like Chrysler's winning 80% of the time, and you have a decent offense, you're going to win a lot of damn games. Get late in those games, and you're just playing keep away at that point from the defense. So shout out Carter. Another OSU guy for leading the country. I'll give a little defensive love. I'm an offensive guy, if you haven't noticed that. Love goals. I was an attackman, so naturally I lean towards that side. Got to show some love to the defenders. Cullen Brown for OSU. He's got 12 caused turnovers. Just an absolute menace. At close, and against Utah, I want to say he had a couple, but it was evident he's just the best pole on OSU. So shout out Cullen. Saves, you got Damian Lewis from VMI. He's got 55 saves on the season. No, I'm not gonna lie to you. I haven't watched a second of VMI, but Damian's doing something right. Save percentage, we have, I always butcher this guy's name. Always butcher it. Michael Gianfurcaro. He's playing for the Tar Heels down in Chapel Hill. He's at almost a 70% save percentage on the season. So be looking for him against Hopkins this weekend. Speaking of next weekend, I highlighted 5 games, just kind of caught my eye. Maybe have the biggest implication for the rankings. First off, we got Army-Yale. Army 2-0. wins over kind of nobodies, but they've kind of earned that pedigree. They take on Yale, who took a not-so-good loss to Villanova last weekend. Nova, I think, one of the worst scoring defenses in the country, and Yale I thought their offense kind of underperformed. So looking for Yale to bounce back and maybe Army add another win to that undefeated mark. Denver Cornell is interesting. At Cornell, I mean, I'm going to say this every Cornell game. I mean, I just expect CJ Kurz to have 5-6 goals, and Michael Long to just kind of do their thing. Malowski for Denver is going to get his. That'll be a good game. This is just a fantastic game, this next one. Two top 10 teams. UNC going to Hopkins to play the Blue Jays. Both undefeated. Both easily, this would be their best win of the season, whoever wins. And you got Melendez, Collison, Chavette, and that Hopkins defense going against Bresci's, or that Hopkins offense going against Bresci's defense, and Gianfrancaro in net. So that'll be a huge one. I'm going to be watching that one primarily. That'll get the big screen. Just a fantastic lacrosse game. Not much else to say. This is a top 5 matchup. The reason I'm not as excited as this one, I just don't know what to expect from Princeton because they've only played one game. But they will be Maryland will be coming to New Jersey to play Princeton. And we'll get to see Mackesy. We'll get to see Spanos and Urksa. Yeah. That one I feel like maybe lower scoring. I feel like Maryland, I love slowing it down, getting good looks. So yeah, I feel like that game's gonna be like 9-7. And finally, kind of, I don't know how I feel about this game, but 2 top 20 teams, Penn versus Delaware. Delaware 2-0. Delaware's offense is pretty electric. Not a ton to say about Penn. They 0-1. Them and Penn and Yale were the 2 Ivies who lost last weekend. So they'll look to bounce back against Delaware. Not a ton on Penn. Didn't watch the game last weekend, but if they can pick up a win against Delaware, I mean, that's pretty good. Delaware starts 3-0. Can't complain if you're a Blue Hen fan. Blue Hen fan. Jesus. This first podcast. Cut me some slack if the audio or my wording doesn't sound great. I already know I'm gonna hate listening to my voice on this, but that's all right. I think that's gonna do it. Let me check. Are there any games later this week? Shout out Inside Lacrosse. I love Inside Lacrosse. They got the new kind of live scoreboard. So I feel like the hardest thing is just finding scores for these games. I don't know if there's any games later. Tonight. 3 more games tonight. Drexel and Lafayette, Virginia at High Point. I might watch that one. And then VMI in Hampton. Well, we got a full weekend of games. I will be back, I don't know, Monday, recapping. I'd like to go through, maybe instead of top 15, we'll do top 10. That felt like a little long at the end. And then I can just give a little more detailed breakdowns on the top 10 teams. We'll recap the games and, preview the next weekend. So, I almost forgot. My biggest gripe with college lacrosse right now, I don't know if it's the schools doing it or the governing body of the NCAA. Can we please just put every college lacrosse game on one streaming service? I understand conferences have TV rights, like the Big Ten has its own streaming service. But, I mean, Big Ten Plus, Lacrosse TV, Flow Sports. Flow Sports, I want to fight everybody associated with Flow Sports. Just all these streaming services that you'd never even consider buying other than to watch some of these games. Just makes it hard for a fan who wants to watch every game. I think the simple solution, simple in the biggest air quotes ever, would just be to strike some sort of deal with ESPN, and they just carry every college game. Because, it's tough. Like, you're spending serious amounts of money on these random streaming services that serve no other purpose other than to watch probably one game a week of college lacrosse. So that's just a personal. This has been going on, I feel like, for the past couple of years. Just a personal vendetta of mine is to just get these schools and just the NCAA governing body of lacrosse on the same page when it comes to broadcasting these games, because I think it's really hurting the sport. And because if I'm just flicking through, I don't know, most people don't have cable anymore, but flipping through the channels, and there's a possibility I might, hop on a college basketball game that I'd never tune into, or a college football game. Lacrosse, there's not even like that option. So I know that was kind of rambling at the end, but I felt like I have to get that off my chest. And yeah, we'll see you guys also, I am a sucker. I don't know if this is ever even going to make it to the ears of the people who need to hear it. I am a sucker for college lacrosse school apparel. I have no loyalties. I will wear anything. If any school wants to send me some merch to rock for this season, I'll become the biggest supporter of that team and that school. I'm just a whore for some good apparel. Always was a fan of Sideline Swap growing up. And I don't give a shit if I make any money off this podcast. If one school sends me a shirt with their logo on it, I consider that a win. So I'm a 2X if anyone wants to send stuff. But yeah, talk to you guys next week.